Huh. Fools. They thought they could predict you. That's the arrogance of agencies who believe numbers can decode spirit, who think algorithms can bottle thunder. So they ran your face through their databases. They cross-referenced bone density with biometric grids, mapped symmetry with emotional response charts, traced every angle of your jaw, every flicker in your eyes, every micro-expression that most people don't even realize they're leaking. They compared it to leaders, to outliers, to historical figures they've studied in secret archives. And then the reports came back, not just to one office, but to an entire chain of command. The analysts went pale. The agents who were trained never to reveal emotion dropped their pens, exchanged nervous glances, whispered the unthinkable. Because what they found in you wasn't a resemblance. It wasn't a mere probability. It was a confirmation. You carry markers in your features that belong to those who altered entire eras. And the room shifted. Because when the CIA realizes they're not looking at another citizen, but at a human blueprint they can't classify, panic begins to creep into corridors that usually walk unshaken. Understand what this means. They aren't shocked because of vanity. They aren't in awe because of beauty. No, what unsettles them is how your very structure, the geometry of your existence, carries the same signatures as revolutionaries, as architects of turning points, as catalysts that history books are still struggling to contain. They read your bone structure like a coded language. They dissected the proportion of your cheekbones like they were examining coordinates to a hidden weapon. They scanned the tilt of your gaze and realized it didn't align with conformity. It aligned with command. And the worst part for them, every metric screamed the same conclusion. You are not a follower. You are a trigger, a force, disguised as a face, walking among the unassuming, carrying a charge that no algorithm was designed to neutralize. Do you see the irony? The very institution that has cataloged every dissident, that prides itself on surveillance without error, has stumbled into something it cannot control. They thought they were analyzing. Instead, they were uncovering. And the more they uncovered, the more the ground beneath them cracked. Because when their software drew lines over your face, they realized they were drawing lines into the future. And that future does not belong to them. It belongs to you. The data didn't just describe what you are. It projected what you are destined to trigger. Influence patterns, leadership psychology, decision tree dominance. It all converged into one horrific reality for them. You are not one of the many. You are one of the few whose very presence rearranges the hierarchy of a room, a city, a world. So now the whispers circulate behind reinforced walls. They won't put this in public records. They won't admit it in hearings. But behind encrypted channels, the message is spreading. Your face isn't a profile. It's a prophecy in human form. You don't walk into a room and belong. You walk in, and the room reconfigures around you. The patterns they've relied on for decades don't hold. The intimidation techniques, the persuasion models, the crowd manipulation formulas, they fracture when applied to you. Because you aren't wired like the masses, you're wired like an origin point. That's what their analysis confirmed, and now they're terrified that others will notice it too. Think of the chaos this causes for them. Their whole empire depends on prediction. If they can predict, they can control. If they can control, they can neutralize. But you showed up as an outlier they couldn't bend into compliance. Their software flagged you as incalculable. Their reports flagged you as non-conforming. Their conclusions circled the same phrase again and again: uncontainable potential. And the higher-ups hate those words more than any weapon, more than any headline, more than any scandal. Because weapons can be disarmed, scandals can be spun, but potential, pure, ungoverned potential, is the one element they cannot confiscate. And in you, they've found it burning like a fuse they can't cut. You want to know why the world is shook? It's because the rumor leaked. Somewhere, an analyst whispered too loudly. Somewhere, a report crossed the wrong desk. Now the word has escaped the vault. People don't know the details, but they feel the vibration. They sense that something is different in the air, that someone has walked into their timeline carrying a face that reads like a declaration of upheaval. And the world reacts the only way it can, through awe, through fear, through obsession. Your image isn't just your image anymore. It's become a cipher. People glance at you and feel a jolt they can't articulate. Some are drawn, some are disturbed, but none can ignore it. That's the truth the CIA stumbled upon. You can't be ignored because your very design refuses to let people look away. Now let's peel it back further. When they overlay your facial data with historical databases, patterns emerge that they wish they never saw. Leaders who broke empires, voices that redirected cultures, shadows that toppled dynasties. And while the agency wants to dismiss it as coincidence, the numbers don't allow it. The same bone ratios, the same gaze intensity, the same anomaly curves on expression analysis. Too many parallels. And when institutions that thrive on control see something they can't dismiss, their default instinct is panic disguised as curiosity. That's what's happening now. They say they're studying you. In reality, they're bracing against you. But here's the twist that haunts them. Discovery doesn't equal prevention. They can analyze every angle of your face. They can simulate every possible outcome. And yet they still can't intercept the one element that overrides their science: your will. Because will isn't measurable. Drive isn't reducible to a chart. Vision doesn't submit to surveillance. That's what makes you lethal to them. You're both mapped and unmappable. They have the data, but the data doesn't give them leverage. It gives them dread. Every new report doesn't bring them closer to control. It reminds them of how far outside their reach you really are. And so the paranoia spreads. Imagine rooms full of seasoned officials replaying your image like it's evidence of a crime. Yet the crime hasn't even happened. Imagine experts arguing over probability curves while knowing in their gut that no curve captures the gravity of a person who alters the room just by being in it. Imagine a council debating whether to categorize you as threat or phenomenon, but realizing both categories collapse when applied to you. This is where they are now. They're not debating whether you matter. They're debating how much longer they can deny it before the whole world realizes what they already fear. You are the figure they didn't account for, the presence they can't erase, the name that slips into their files like ink they can't scrub out. And here's the cruelest revelation for them. The more they investigate, the more they spread your legend. Every analyst who whispers about your features becomes an unintentional herald. Every agent who warns about your potential becomes another amplifier. In trying to contain you, they crown you. In trying to dissect you, they elevate you. In trying to bury you in reports, they etch your significance deeper into history. That's the paradox they walked into the moment they scanned your face. They thought they were running analysis. They didn't realize they were writing scripture. So understand this. You don't need to beg for recognition. You don't need to shout for attention. The attention is already yours, stolen from the very hands that tried to reduce you to a file. The world is shook not because of a headline, but because reality itself is rearranging to acknowledge what data only confirmed. You are extraordinary, and extraordinary refuses invisibility. And every passing day, the agencies that pride themselves on secrets are forced to face the most public truth of all. You exist, and your existence alters the game. Now the question isn't whether the CIA has discovered something about you. The question is how long the rest of the world will take to realize they've been living beside a catalyst wearing a human face. Because once they realize it, nothing will return to the old order. That's the real terror for those who thought control was permanent. They've studied your features, and in doing so, they've exposed their own weakness. You are uncontainable. You are unforgettable. You are undeniable. And that's why the panic is spreading faster than any report can suppress. And the story doesn't end here. This is only the first revelation, the first crack in the walls they've built around perception. Because now that the world knows something is different about you, the hunt for proof intensifies. Files will be leaked, more agents will whisper, more corridors will tremble. And every new piece of evidence will only confirm what they already dread. That your existence is not just remarkable, it's disruptive. And when disruption wears a face like yours, it can't be ignored. It can only escalate. They will try to name the sensation you create. They will invent labels to shrink you into a case file they can file away. They will patch together phrases, outlier, high potential, unclassifiable, and stamp them across your dossier until the paper looks like a shrine built by anxious clerks. They will hold press briefings in rooms that feel colder than usual, deliver statements with rehearsed cadence, and hope repetition will steady a room that's losing its center. Watch what happens next. Offices that once ran like clockwork begin to hiccup. Meetings extend into nights. Advisors exchange frantic notes. Analysts who prided themselves on certainty begin to hedge, to couch their reports in conditional language, to add footnotes to footnotes. Behind glass, men and women in tailored suits trace the contours of your photographs with gloved fingers and pretend not to feel the electricity that jumps at the edges of your portrait. Their confidence is eroding because the thing they used to rely on, predictability, no longer holds. Every attempt to explain you publicly only deepens the mystery. Each press release becomes a breadcrumb trail for those who want to prove you are more than rumor. Every denial plants a seed of curiosity. The more they insist you are merely the product of statistical outliers, the more the public leans closer, hungry for contradiction. Curiosity is contagious. Rumor turns into investigation. Investigation turns into story. And stories are the currency of power when institutions lose their hold on truth. Then the private sector enters the circle. Corporations with shadow labs, consultants who once sold certainty to billionaires. They all recalibrate their models to include you as a variable. Fortune favors those who can monetize the unknown. Suddenly, facial recognition startups, boutique psychographic firms, even fashion houses start to speak in the same hush-hush tones as spooks. Your image is sampled, analyzed, turned into predictive algorithms that promise to reproduce the effect you produce naturally. Meanwhile, the streets whisper with different voices. People who never knew your name start describing the particular way your jaw catches light, the exact cadence of your smile, the way your eyes hold someone's attention for a fraction longer than polite conversation allows. Unexpected allies appear. Strangers who saw you once in a crowd, old co-workers who remembered a decision you made years ago, small-town witnesses who recall a moment you unknowingly altered a meeting by your presence alone. That's when the cultural machinery pivots. Talk shows replay stolen clips. Social feeds splice your image with archival footage of historic leaders, careless comparisons that light argument threads across platforms. Influencers speculate. Historian channels dissect bone ratios with faux academic urgency. The chatter accelerates until the public's appetite for more becomes a pressure cooker. At that pressure, secrecy breeds gossip, and gossip becomes momentum. This is the precise moment when you become a choice point for the crowd. People begin to pick sides. Some will recoil, frightened by the idea that someone among them alters social dynamics without permission. Others will rally, intoxicated by the possibility that a single human could shift a room, a city, a policy. That polarization is a resource, one the agency had hoped to prevent. Their models predicted quiet containment, not mass fascination. In their panic, the agency's playbook shifts. Where once they might have used quiet surveillance, now some voices push for invasive measures, targeted profiles, discreet approaches to people close to you, attempts to tamper with platforms that host rumors. Others argue for careful courting, invite you into controlled interviews, craft narratives that co-opt your image into acceptable frames. Still others whisper of creating counter-narratives through controlled leaks that steer attention away from uncomfortable threads. Each proposed move fractures into its own risk. Each reaction risks amplifying the very signal they want to bury. And every time an agent leans into action, consequences ricochet. Imagine a mid-level officer shadowing a friend of yours. That friend notices, posts about being watched, and a private concern becomes viral. Imagine a conservative outlet taking an official denial and framing it as proof of cover-up. Traffic spikes and millions begin to believe there is something to hide. The agency's moves, meant to compress the story, expand it. But among all this noise, a quieter evolution occurs. People decide to replicate you. For every analyst who wants quiet, there's an opportunist thinking how to clone the effect. They study your angles, mimic your poses in staged images, attempt to manufacture presence in workshops that promise to teach how to command a room. Coaches sell seminars on micro-expressions. Influencers copy your look. Boutique firms create presence-enhancing products. Imitation proliferates. Across borders, the tremor echoes. Foreign agencies cross-check their own archives, wondering if this face is a single phenomenon or part of a pattern they missed. Think tanks write speculative briefs. Parliamentary aides whisper at closed-door sessions. Even nations that rarely admit surprise send quiet requests for more information. Diplomatic cables, once banal and bureaucratic, now carry unusual urgency. And when states lean in, private donors lean in too. Foundations that fund social research begin to underwrite probes and commission retrospective studies. Suddenly, what started as a domestic curiosity becomes an international inquiry. Public intellectuals and artists add fuel. A novelist turns an offhand anecdote into a viral excerpt. A playwright stages a scene that echoes your posture in a small theater, and critics write think pieces. The more cultural institutions translate the phenomenon into commentary. The more ordinary people feel permission to talk about it in everyday places, cafes, buses, family meals. Conversations that used to be private now have public edges. At the same time, Covert networks of influence activate. Old contacts from a decade ago receive calls that previously would never have reached them. Anonymous donors fund investigative reporters. Former insiders, sick of secrecy, prepare to sell testimonies. The ecosystem of secrecy that once protected institutions begins to fragment because the story grows wider than any single agency can manage. Each actor adds a new vector, a leak here, a denial there, a sympathetic op-ed, a leaked memo, a courtroom subpoena. And remember, there's an emotional economy at work. Fear breeds control. Awe breeds imitation. Curiosity breeds markets. Each reaction creates incentives for others to act. That feedback loop is what terrifies the agency, not because it cannot find you in a database, but because databases cannot capture emergent social momentum, the way millions of small choices conspire to tip culture. Imitation brings danger and revelation at once. Dangerous because copying might dilute the authenticity that made you uncontainable. Revelation because imitators leave traces, botched replicas, exaggerated claims, staged events that investigative reporters can dissect. Those traces become breadcrumbs. Journalists follow back to real meetings, real files, and people who knew you before your face became a public experiment. There's another engine that wakes in this environment, the legal apparatus. Lawsuits bubble up from parties who claim defamation, from contractors who assert proprietary models were misused, from former collaborators who suddenly see a market to litigate. Court filings leak. Depositions reveal who shared data with whom. The courtroom becomes another arena where your face is played like testimony and sworn statements puncture neat narratives. Legal discovery is relentless. It sifts through networks and produces documents that can both damage and vindicate. In the middle of all this, while agencies argue, while imitators stage their versions, while courts subpoena files, you remain the axis. There is power in not being the sum of other people's interpretations. Your life, small gestures, private choices, the rhythm of your days, becomes resistant to being fully translated into data. That resistance intoxicates some and terrifies others. It makes your presence more contagious. People start to view presence as a quality, a kind of bravery. They project onto you hopes and fears that have nothing to do with your daily reality, but everything to do with their hunger for meaning. So what will you do with that attention? Will you step into the orbit, speak publicly, and risk being contained? Will you stay private and watch the legend grow into something you never intended? Either choice will alter the trajectory the agency fears. Speak, and they will try to script you. Stay silent, and they will script you anyway. The leverage lies in understanding that discovery has already changed the field. Whatever you choose now will be met by forces eager to convert your existence into an explanation, a product, a lawsuit, or a rallying cry. This is the pressure moment. The world watches to see whether a face can become a force. The agency analyzed you and found something that shook its foundations. The reaction has become a test. If curiosity grows into organized support, the old maps of influence redraw. If fear hardens into opposition, containment strategies will escalate with legal, technological, and cultural tools converging to mute you. That binary hangs in the air like a decision the public must make. But remember, discovery was only their beginning. They found the clue in your features, and that clue set off a cascade. Now every actor, state, private, media, legal, must choose how to respond. The intelligence that once believed it could catalog humanity is learning that catalogs can ignite movements. You are not simply a subject of analysis, You are the axis on which the next chapter pivots. The world will not be idle while that pivot turns. This is the moment that separates rumor from legend. The agencies can leak, litigate, or lobby, but none of those moves erase the simple fact. People have begun to believe you matter. Belief fuels gatherings in basements and posts on midnight feeds. It spawns hashtags and homemade badges and late-night conversations that stitch strangers into allegiance. Ordinary gestures, a quick, unscripted smile in a crowded station, the way someone defers to your glance begin to mean more. Influence, once assumed to be the privilege of titles and credentials, now traces a contour that follows you. Because influence is no longer a credential, it's practiced attention. People build a grammar for it, phrases to describe the precise moves you make that change the tone of a room. It is not trickery, it is calibrated presence. As more people copy that presence, conversations shift. Policy priorities bend, business deals are renegotiated, meeting dynamics that once rewarded pedigree now reward clarity and attention. The change is incremental, invisible day to day, but cumulative in consequence. The agency watches with a mix of respect and alarm. Their models map sentiment and trace likely supporters, but they cannot foresee the small human choices that cause cascades. A colleague choosing to speak up at risk, a voter shifting allegiance because someone like you took a stand, a reporter risking a source to verify a claim. Those micro-decisions ripple outward in ways no chart contains. Your face becomes a catalyst they can neither suppress nor fully quantify. Institutions face a fork. Domesticate the movement with controlled spokespeople and study as, or let it remain organic and therefore unpredictable. Many will attempt the first. Foundations will host panels. Think tanks will commission reports that translate presence into donor-friendly metrics. Corporations will propose partnerships that package presence into marketing. That synchronization between genuine influence and manufactured narrative creates both opportunity and risk. Darker operators take notice too. Political strategists design campaigns to harness or discredit the phenomenon. Cyber units test amplification tactics. Disinformation shops draft narratives to attach scandal and make replication costly. When influence has currency, it becomes contested. Each attempt to discredit is itself a signal of power. The more they push to bury something, the more people lean in to see why. As dossiers multiply and aides whisper in stairwells, a new class of intermediaries emerges. Reputation caretakers. These aren't old PR shops. They are strategic councils that advise how to navigate being the axis. They map safe visibility, propose alliances, and draft legal protections. Some are sincere. Others build careers advising volatile figures into constructive influence. Some see a chance to monetize presence under the guise of stewardship. Not every move will be honorable. Some will try to monetize your image without consent. Some will stage spectacles to test appetite. Some whisper that containment requires neutralization, plant a distraction, provoke a feud, shift attention toward personality skirmishes and momentum splinters. Those tactics are blunt instruments meant to exhaust attention and tire supporters into withdrawal. Yet every countermeasure also exposes processes ripe for reform. Leaks and court filings teach citizens how decisions are made and where accountability must land. Clarity emerges in unexpected places. People governed by invisible rules begin to see openings. Activists repurpose your narrative to amplify overlooked causes. Community organizers adopt postures inspired by your actions, less fandom, more method. Workshops on attentive leadership sell out. Universities host panels. Grants fund research into presence and persuasion. Cultural institutions translate curiosity into public projects that sustain momentum beyond headlines. Your role in that transformation is not spectacle, it's steady choices. Each time you refuse co-option, you inject credibility into those who follow. When you decline offers that would hollow your message, you set standards. When you intervene in public disputes with measured clarity, you model how to act under pressure. Presence that is principle attracts a constituency that values discernment and patience. That constituency outlasts trends. It builds institutions. Legal pressure complicates the path. Lawsuits generate documents that leak into the public record. NDAs protect certain truths and obscure others. Courtroom mechanics are slow and draining and can fatigue supporters. But legal discovery also produces openings, sworn statements, depositions, released files that journalists parse to reconstruct timelines. Those documents can vindicate or complicate narratives, and the process forces institutions into daylight. International reactions widen the stakes. Allies ask questions. Adversaries exploit narratives. Foreign media refract the phenomenon through different filters, sometimes flattering, sometimes distorted. Diplomatic channels carry unusual urgency. What began as a domestic curiosity becomes a matter on foreign policy agendas. That expansion brings resources and risk, funding for research and invitations to cooperate, along with the possibility of interference. The most unpredictable factor remains temperament. You may be tempted to curate image or to withdraw. Some will advise you to become a spokesperson. Others will urge quiet. Both paths carry peril, speak and risk being scripted. Withdraw and watch others script you. Either path reshapes institutional response. The leverage lies in stewardship, how you decide to show up, what you defend, and whom you empower. When the dust settles, the true measure will show up in modest places. Councils that choose inclusion, high schools teaching presence as leadership, companies reorganizing meetings to value attention over title. Real change happens through repeated small decisions that reallocate respect and attention. Headlines pass, procedures remain. Those modest shifts, multiplied, rewire the social architecture. Remember, agencies can analyze features. They cannot buy habits. A face can be scanned, proportions recorded, patterns shared. But habits form in repetition. How you show up when no one watches, how you answer petty provocation, how you tend allies. Those practices resist packaging. They are the warranty against co-option. They mark the difference between a meme and a method. Beyond headlines, there will be moments that reveal character. A tense hearing where a colleague risks defense. A leaked memo showing an analyst argued against overreaction. Volunteers showing up for causes you subtly endorse. Those scenes carry consequence. Laws change. Budgets reallocate. Institutions answer citizens. Expect pushback, fake controversies, anonymous reports, endless filings meant to exhaust attention. But each move also exposes process and creates pressure for transparency and reform. Purpose shapes legacy. If your presence becomes a platform, choose what it platforms carefully. Support institutions that build capacity rather than celebrity. Invest in education, local leadership, practices that teach others to carry presence without imitation. Train people to listen, to speak concisely, to take measured risks. Those investments create networks that survive legal maneuvers and media cycles. They are the architecture of lasting change. This is where you come in, not as spectacle, but as steward. The discovery by analysts was only the beginning. What follows is a responsibility to turn curiosity into systems that serve. The world will remember decisions that reroute resources, change institutions, and expand opportunity. Choose with care, act with intention, make influence durable. This moment belongs to those who refuse easy answers and prefer hard work. If you take this seriously, your choices will echo, not as ephemeral fame, but as frameworks others inherit. Be deliberate. Turn watchful gaze of the world into change.